Talk about low-budget flights, no food or movies? I'm out of here. I like running better. Welcome back, YouTube viewers, to another video. Alright, so The Bad Guys 2 finally came out this weekend, and I just recently saw it. So now it's time for my review. Yeah, not much of an intro, but to quickly summarize my expectations for this movie before I actually review it, and yes, there will be a spoilers-free section and then a spoiler section. I want to say that to understand what my expectations for this were, I need to give some brief thoughts on the first film, which I have talked about before in my DreamWorks ranking, but I feel it's necessary to summarize my thoughts one more time. So before I move on, I'd like to remind you all to like the video, maybe comment if you have some thoughts, check out my letterbox, which will be linked in the description. Without further ado, let's do it to it and dive on in. So, the original Bad Guys from 2022, I said this before and I'll say it again. It is the most 7 out of 10 movie I've ever seen. I thought it was good. I liked it. But I just don't quite get the hype around it. I do agree it's one of DreamWorks' best movies in this decade so far, but outside of Puss in Boots: The Last Wish and The Wild Robot, DreamWorks this decade just hasn't been pumping out the hits they used to. It's true the studio has always been inconsistent, but I mean, look what they were able to do in the 2000s. Shrek, Kung Fu Panda, Madagascar 1 and 2, Shrek 2, what else? That sort of thing. Or Over the Hedge and Flushed Away, Chicken Run, Curse of the Were-Rabbit, 2010's How to Train Your Dragon trilogy, Kung Fu Panda 2 and 3, Megamind, Rise of the Guardians. This decade, what have they got out? There's been this, the aforementioned Last Wish and Wild Robot, and then what else? Some people apparently liked The Croods and New Age and Trolls Band Together. So I feel like from that perspective, I can understand why so many people got into The Bad Guys as much as they did. I think it's more a case of when the studio has just been so dry, it's nice to get something that is of quality. But what about the actual movie itself? So, as Chaparral's production said, the animation was very good. Cause yeah. Okay, joking aside, this movie does look really good. Ever since Spider-Verse revolutionized art direction and animation in animated films, so many studios are trying to copy that style but with a twist. Spider-Verse tried to emulate the look of a comic book. The Bad Guys is emulating the look of a graphic novel. Although it doesn't quite do the 2D and 3D as much as Spider-Verse did, but you know. And yeah, I do think the film looks really nice. I mean, art direction anyway. I'm not a big fan of the human designs, but it's not like the human's the main character, so it's not a huge deal. I like the music. I like the concept of an animated heist film. I just think that's a really cool idea. It manages to do the whole thing that Megamind and Despicable Me did of a villain becoming good, but it works because it's not just a copy. Instead of being one guy, it's a whole team. And it's not a parody of superheroes, it's a parody of heist films. And yeah, I think it's a cool idea. I think the movie had an actually good twist villain. But I have two problems with The Bad Guys that really bring it down for me. Instead of being an 8 like it could have been, it's just a 7. I think the movie is just not that funny. I chuckled a lot, but I never actually laughed even once. I think the pacing was just really slow. It just felt so long to me. DreamWorks isn't making their movies longer than usual in recent times, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It hasn't been too big an issue, but I feel like for this, it was just a bit too long. And yeah, well, there are some really great scenes in The Bad Guys, like when Snake is telling Wolf why he hates birthdays, or when his whole argument with Wolf about actually becoming good guys or not. I think Wolf and Snake's arcs in the first movie are really compelling. It's just all the other characters I didn't really care about, and the movie wasn't that funny, and it felt slow. So when it was over, I was just thinking, yeah, that was good. I wouldn't mind watching a sequel, but I just didn't really get into it that much. The Bad Guys 2, on the other hand, oh boy, I have a lot to say about this. So yeah, spoiler-free review before I dive into the actual film itself, if you have seen it, which you should if you haven't. So, The Bad Guys 2 was an improvement in basically every single way. DreamWorks is great at making sequels. That's probably their standout quality. Their sequels are always either better than the original, or at least are on a similar level. And with the exception of, Kung Fu Panda 4? They all build on what came before in some sort of way. Oh, also Shrek the Third didn't do that, but whatever. I mean, Shrek 2, Shrek Forever After, Kung Fu Panda 2 and 3, How to Train Your Dragon 2, How to Train Your Dragon The Hidden World. Sort of the Madagascar sequels, I would argue you could say that about them. But how does the Bad Guys 2 build on the original without getting into spoilers? So, at the end of the first movie, the bad guys had a redemption arc, but they still went to prison for a year because, they're still criminals. They still have to serve their time. But now that they're out, they're all just trying to make an honest living, trying to get jobs, but no one really trusts them because even though they saved the city, I mean, after all the crimes they committed, it makes sense that people wouldn't really trust them. But as they're trying to go good, they get tossed into one last job by this group called the Bad Girls, which is not really what they're called. They're just called that offhand once, thank God, because that's a terrible name. Okay, but what did I think of it? I said the first movie never made me laugh, it just made me chuckle a bunch. This made me laugh multiple times. Maybe not a ton of times, definitely isn't one of the funniest DreamWorks movies, but I still got quite a few laughs out of this one, way more than the original. Yes, there is some of that DreamWorks crude humor which can work. It works in Shrek, works in Madagascar. Here, well, some of it did make me laugh, I gotta say. Other jokes like that, I feel like just really didn't need to be there. This movie has less fart jokes than the original, which I really appreciate, but so many of them are shoved into the third act, which is really annoying, but they're not as bad as one would think, thankfully. Also, despite being only 4 minutes longer than the original, which, yeah, isn't that much, but the original being too long was a complaint I had, but this didn't feel too long. Maybe because it's a different experience of seeing this in the theater compared to watching a movie at home, but this felt pretty fast-paced to me. A part of that is because I was way more invested in the story, even though I wasn't invested in the story of the first film. So yeah, Bad Guys. Oh yeah, also, well, they don't do a ton. Webbs, Piranha, and Shark, to me, are just more likable here. And while Snake doesn't have as much to do as he did before, I'd say he still serves the story fairly well, even though his role is heavily diminished. So yeah, Bad Guys 2 spoiler-free review. Really good movie. I heavily enjoyed it. I highly recommend you check it out if you haven't already. You gotta support DreamWorks. I mean, why would you see this? Why would you see, like, I don't know, Fantastic Four First Steps or Smurfs when you could watch this instead? Okay, actually gonna spoil the movie for those of you who have seen it. So I just gotta firstly say that the third act was great. The whole action climax on the rocket ship with the gold and everything, that was awesome. That was genuinely one of the coolest action scenes DreamWorks has produced in a while. I mean, maybe it's not quite gonna blow you away compared to an action scene like Puss versus Death in The Last Wish, or I don't know, the climax of The Wild Robot I thought was really amazing, but it was still really cool. All the action scenes in this movie were really good. The action in the first film was really enjoyable too, but maybe because I got to see this in the theater, which definitely helps, but it just felt more fast-paced and exciting. Like the opening that shows the bad guys a couple years ago at the top of their game. They steal a fancy car from some rich Egyptian guy. And they have this crazy car chase with all these people and stuff gathering around, things flying everywhere. It was really cool. It also briefly sets up stuff for later, which is appreciated. It's not just a cool action scene to open the movie. And I love the gag of how as they're driving in this cool car, Wolf saying, "I'm never gonna drive another car again!" And then it cuts to present day where he's driving this beaten up old junky car. And also it clarifies these movies take place in LA, which I don't know why I didn't think that for the first movie, because it does kind of look like that. And all I have to say is that even if the bad guys do manage to get decent jobs, they're still probably going to have a hard time paying the cost of living in LA. That was just entirely on my mind during the first act. Anyway, so how about the characters this time around? So, I really like how they were progressed from the first film, because aside from becoming good guys, hey, Webbs, Shark, what's the other one, Piranha, their personalities didn't really change, so they're basically the same as they were before. And I thought they were more entertaining. Like I said, the spoiler-free review, I just found them to be more funny. Maybe they're because I didn't need to be introduced to them already, so the movies just didn't have to waste time with that. But I just found their jokes to be better. They were just better comedic timing, better line delivery, I suppose, and they were just better jokes. I thought. Like Piranha doesn't have as many fart jokes as he did because that was basically his entire character in the first movie. His character here is more so just that he gets nervous, which isn't amazing, but it actually got a couple of laughs out of me, so that's something. Snake begins the movie being super calm and tranquil and doing yoga or something, which completely catches the other guys off guard until they find out it's because he has a girlfriend. And then it turns out that she was actually just tricking him to get close to him and the other bad guys, so she and her team could enlist them to help them steal all the gold in the world. Because that is the villain's plan in this movie, which we don't actually find out for a while, but I thought it was cleverly set up. Just because the movie is about how the bad guys, even though they've gone good, no one still trusts them, like I said before. But then they see on TV, hey, there's this guy called the Phantom Bandit stealing all this stuff. Maybe we can help the police catch the Phantom Bandit, and then the more the world will see us as good guys. And can I just say that for one that the police chief, now commissioner, is far less annoying than she was in the first movie. That was greatly appreciated. But anyway, so the bad guys are going to help her catch the Phantom Bandit because they were former cons. They know how to think how to catch one. And they deduce that the Phantom Bandit has been everything the Phantom Bandit has stolen was made of MacGuffinite. Ha 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 ha. And yeah, they say, well, that doesn't sound like a word. And one of them says, well, even a regular word might not sound like a word if you say it a bunch of times. Like gold. And they say gold, gold, gold. Yeah, it does sound kind of weird. Which one, you would just think, haha, it's funny they said gold because they used to be thieves. But no, that was to foreshadow that the villain's plan is to steal all the gold in the world. Because when the bad girls, I hate saying it so much, when the villains enlist the bad guys' help, which is basically blackmailing them, their boss tells them, look, so you're going to help us steal this watch from this guy at his wedding because he built this giant rocket ship. And with his watch, we can take over the giant rocket ship and then use all the stuff we stole, it's made of MacGuffinite, as a powerful magnet to steal all the gold in the entire world. And it's not about the loot, it's about the feeling of the heist. It's about a power move, it's about respect. And the main villain, who is a snow leopard, so she just looks like she'd be Tai Lung's sister from Kung Fu Panda. So anyway, yeah, she's trying to tell Wolf, well, yeah, you might want to try to be good now, but you don't have respect anymore. You're not really getting anywhere, which he does briefly consider, thinking, maybe I should go back to being a bad guy, but I like that the entire movie isn't built around this. It's more so just a couple scenes of him thinking that, yeah, I haven't really gotten anywhere. My life is a wreck right now. But he ultimately thinks, no, I'd rather be a good guy because I don't want to be some stuck-up loser who's always on the run and doesn't really have a fulfilling life at all. I mean, kind of ties into Diane's arc from the first movie where we find out that she was the legendary criminal, the Crimson Paw, but she eventually gave that all up because she thought, well, the crime doesn't pay. It's not a fulfilling life. Do you really get anywhere as a criminal? And I thought, speaking of Diane, I thought she was just a far more entertaining character this time around. In the first movie, she was basically just a plot device. Thought she had decent chemistry with Wolf, but what was I going to say about her if I did an in-depth review of the bad guys? I thought she was kind of interesting because she had a good backstory, but here it's more so, okay, part of it is just this really funny gag. Okay, I really laughed. Probably my biggest laugh, which is probably dumb, I laughed at this the most, is when everyone's wondering, hey, Wolf, you okay? And Snake says, oh, he's just mad that he got friend-zoned by the governor. I don't know, I just found that really funny. But yeah, so her major part of the plot is that she is going to this maximum security prison where she's interrogating Marmalade because, he didn't die at the end of the first movie. He's one of the few DreamWorks villains who doesn't die. Which I find to be really funny. So she just interviews him in his prison, trying to figure out what's going on with the stolen objects and the Phantom Bandit, because she knows that he has some kind of connection to it. Like, they play Connect 4, and it's genuinely a really funny scene. And she kind of deduces his plan from there, that he was the one who told the villains what they could do to steal all the gold in the whole plan with the rocket. And he also may have given them, I'm not sure if he was one who gave it to them, but the villains tell the bad guys, well, if you don't help us, we're going to show the world this footage that reveals that Diane, who is now the governor of, used to be the Crimson Paw, because at the end of the first movie, no one actually knew that she was a Crimson Paw. Everyone thought Marmalade was. But if this got out to the world, that would reveal her criminal history, and she'd totally have to resign as governor. She'd get kicked out. So the bad guys agree, fine, we'll help you with your crazy job. And the actual heist itself they go on, where they have to infiltrate this guy's wedding, is just way more entertaining than the heist in the first film, which I did like, don't get me wrong, but I don't know, I just found this one to be a bit funnier. Also, I like how it kind of ties into the beginning where the Egyptian guy they robbed in the flashback comes back and kind of messes up everything for them. And I like that it shows that even though the bad guys are kind of struggling with this whole heist thing because they haven't done it in a while, they were still masters, so they still managed to pull it off, which I appreciate. You know, so even though the bad guys do agree, okay, fine, we're gonna do your job, they eventually decide, hey, we're not gonna be part of this crazy mission to steal all the gold in the world, and they find out what the plan actually is. Because before they're just told, hey, help us steal this rocket. They aren't told the details. But also, once they have gold on them, the villains use this MacGuffinite magnet thing to mess with them and say, hey, if you stay stuck to that magnet, the video that's being uploaded showing that Diane is actually the Crimson Paw won't get uploaded, or won't finish. But if you do get out, the video will resume uploading because of magnetic stuff or something. I'm not really sure. Which also, I suppose a really good detail. When you see the video being uploaded on the side of thumbnails of what I presume are other videos, you can see screenshots from The Last Wish and The Wild Robot. Huh. I guess the villain of this movie likes to watch video essays. That also completely discredits the DreamWorks theory, but yeah, whatever. I don't know. So yeah, the video actually does get uploaded. Diane eventually does get leaked that, oh, she was the Crimson Paw the whole time. And because of that, Marmalade gets freed. Because at the end of the first movie, he didn't get arrested because, oh, the people found out he was part of this crazy plot to mind control an army of guinea pigs take over the world or whatever. They arrested him because they thought he was the Crimson Paw. But now they know he wasn't, they just let him go. Of course, has a gold necklace on because he's egotistical, I guess. And then when all the gold in the world starts being sucked up by the rocket, goes along with it and gets flown into space, which I thought was pretty funny. Good gag. And there's a part where right before the rocket is about to launch, Diane does actually make it to the rocket and has a fight with the villains, which is really good fight, honestly. Good fight scene. And she does save Mr. Wolf from the villain, but I appreciate that she isn't the one to stop the villain too. She just gives some help because Mr. Wolf's still the main character. I'd want him to not get saved by someone. I want him to see him beat the villain, and he also does ideologically, as he's saying, what I had before wasn't respect, it was fear. And also, even though the whole world thinks the bad guys are villains now, because, they teamed up with a new set of villains, and everyone thinks they stole the MacGuffinite, they all think, oh, these guys are villains now, and we should never have trusted them. But then the rocket, after the bad guys disable the rocket, it's shooting to Earth, and it blows up. And it just immediately cuts to the bad guys and Diane's funeral. And the police commissioner saying, oh, it's so sad. We thought the bad guys were villains forever. But in truth, they saved us all. It's so ironic. And then she walks into some room where the bad guys and Diane are sitting there just with a bunch of broken bones. She says, I really did a good job with your funeral, huh? And they're all asking, okay, now that our lives are saved, why did we have to fake our deaths? And she says, oh, simple. These government agent guys who just show up say they've seen all the stuff you've done. They're really impressed. So we want you guys to all become secret agents now. And then there's a post-credits scene where it reveals that Marmalade is sitting in some kind of car in space, and that he's still out there and he's got a new evil plan, and yeah. You know, as weird as it was to explain the plot of this movie, it was really enjoyable. I thought it was really funny. All the action scenes were really good. I thought all the emotional stuff and all the character moments with Wolf and everyone else, I thought those were handled really well. I thought the ones in the first movie were too. Don't get me wrong, but because that movie was so poorly paced, I just didn't get as invested as I wished I could have because the connecting tissue just was kind of weak, honestly. Also, this is a sequel, meaning it doesn't have to reestablish the characters in detail, so that certainly helps. I've seen some reviews say that the first movie was better because it focused more on the story, the characters, and their development, and this one was more about the action, but, well, I would say that's technically true. I also think the story that was here was just more interesting. I mean, as well handled as the story of the first movie with bad guys becoming good guys was done, it's more interesting, in my opinion, to see good guys or bad guys who are trying to become heroes who are still struggling with the fact that the world doesn't trust them because they used to be villains for so long. I mean, think about it like this. Megamind never got a sequel, so we never would have got to see something like that. Despicable Me had a sequel, but it wasn't really about that, as far as I can remember. And yes, I know Megamind technically has a sequel, but that wasn't made by DreamWorks. That was made by their television division. Also, at the end of the first Megamind, the whole city sees him as a hero. But in this movie, it shows that the bad guys are still viewed as criminals because that's what they were for so many years. So yeah, Bad Guys 2, really good. Another success for DreamWorks. And yeah, I gotta say this is my favorite movie of the year. Granted, it's still only an 8 out of 10. I think last year had some much better films. I look forward to whatever DreamWorks has next. I mean, the studio's entire brand is inconsistency. They'll make a couple good movies, couple bad movies. What's their next movie going to be? It's going to be from the directors of Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, so I'm excited for when that comes out eventually. But after that, they're going to go into Shrek 5, which looks to be kind of bad, and they're going to do Cocomelon, the movie, which is just a terrible idea. Just give us the Wild Robot 2, DreamWorks. Okay, I wouldn't want them to rush that, but all I can say is I would take Kung Fu Panda 5 over Cocomelon the movie. DreamWorks isn't supposed to make movies for babies. That's pretty ironic coming from the studio that's first film was Ants. So yeah, really good movie. Enjoyed it. Yeah, I haven't seen it already. I don't know why you're watching the spoiler section. So, comment down below what you thought of this. That's all for now. And remember to stay way past cool.